They scanned us, measured us, tested our strength, our minds, our diplomacy. And then they realized the truth. Humans aren't just survivors of a death world. We're what the galaxy fears becoming. One ship, one crew, against an unstoppable pirate fleet. And that was just the beginning. Before we begin, remember this. In a galaxy where peace has made everyone soft, one species grew strong by surviving the impossible. If you're ready to see what happens when Deathworlders step onto the galactic stage, subscribe now. Because this story, it changes everything. Commander Rylan Voss gazed out from the bridge of the ISS Halcyon as the alien monolith hovered in the abyss ahead, immense, radiant, and hauntingly elegant. It shimmered like frozen lightning, nothing like the armored steel and hum of human-built crafts. After traversing the stars for 3 long months at quantum speed, humankind had finally stumbled upon something other. "Commander, we're receiving a signal," said Ensign Theo Jalen from the ops console. His voice remained professional, but Rylan caught the thrill behind it. They all felt it. This moment pulsed with the weight of history. Everything was about to change. Dr. Amara Solis lifted her head from the data core, eyes wide with wonder. Linguistics AI is decoding it flawlessly. They communicate through advanced math, pure, elegant logic. She paused, lips curling into a nervous smile. "They're inviting us to join something called the Celestial Accord." Rylan tugged his collar and squared his shoulders. "Patch them through. Let's not trip on our first step into the galaxy." The forward display shimmered and resolved into the figure of a being so mesmerizing it seemed carved from starlight. Ethereal and tall, its skin glowed like moonlit ice, and its obsidian eyes radiated calm wisdom, like those of a woodland creature glimpsed through fog. When it spoke, the voice was a melody wrapped in air. "Greetings, travelers from beyond. I am Emissary Thalrin of the Elari Ascendancy. Welcome to Accord Space. From which world do you hail?" Rylan stepped forward. "Commander Rylan Voss, representing Terra, our home planet. This is humanity's first passage beyond the Helio system. Something subtle, but deeply unsettling, shifted in the alien's expression. The serene eyes widened, not in wonder, but in alarm, maybe even dread. "Did you say Terra?" Thalrin's lyrical voice now trembled. "Yes," Rylan replied gently. "Third world orbiting a yellow star. Blue oceans, vast green wilderness. A beautiful, if temperamental, place." Behind Thalrin, other Elari were suddenly in motion, gesturing, muttering, fingers dancing across translucent consoles. Rylan's heart quickened. What had they triggered? The emissary raised one elongated, luminous hand. "Commander Voss, I must request you hold position while we consult our archives. Please remain at ease." The screen blinked to black. Silence gripped the Halcyon. Dr. Solis peered again at her analysis array, brows furrowed. Commander Ezra Nix, Voss's stoic second-in-command, began running tactical diagnostics, just in case. Ambassador Mira Wren adjusted the lapel of her formal robe, her knuckles pale. "That was strange," Amara muttered. Why did the name Terra unsettle them? No one had time to respond. The display snapped back to life. Now, 5 alien figures stood on screen, each different in form, yet all visibly distressed. Thalrin remained in the center, his glow dimmer now, as though a shadow had passed over him. "Commander Voss," he began slowly, "our records confirm your homeworld, Terra, is catalogued as a Category 12 hazard sphere." He hesitated, his musical tone now laden with caution. "This classification means it is one of the most lethal planetary environments we have ever encountered. No intelligent life form has ever emerged from a planet ranked beyond Tier 3 in severity," Thalrin whispered. He stopped, as if reluctant to continue. "Until now." Rylan blinked, baffled. "Severe? Terra's not that extreme. We've got weather systems, some tremors, sure, but nothing apocalyptic." The delegates exchanged uneasy glances. Rylan was starting to understand the expression. Fear. Quiet, restrained, but unmistakable. "Your gravity," said a second figure. This one resembled a luminous insect with sprawling, iridescent wings and far too many eyes, "is nearly twice the force most Accord species can survive." Another alien, whose delicate, petal-like limbs quivered as it spoke, added, "Your atmosphere is laced with oxygen levels that are toxic to many life forms." A third leaned forward, voice hushed and eyes unblinking. "Your world endures cyclical glaciations, volcanic upheavals, and cosmic collisions capable of extinguishing civilizations." Then came the final whisper. "And the predators." It came from a being that looked like it had bloomed from soil and then walked away, floral but sentient. Records speak of pack hunters with razor teeth, and beasts so massive they rival our largest transport ships. Rylan scratched at his temple, eyebrows raised. "Well, yeah, we've got sharks, bears, crocs, but they mostly leave us alone if we don't bother them." The alien bridge fell so deathly quiet that Rylan briefly wondered if the link had dropped. Then, after a long silence, Thao Rin returned to the feed. "Commander Voss," he said carefully, "we formally invite you and your delegation to Havenspire for a ceremonial first Accord encounter. But as protocol dictates, we must first complete biological assessments for everyone's safety." "Absolutely," Rylan replied. "We want to prove we're here in peace." An hour later, Rylan and his senior officers stood in the Ilaris' so-called welcoming atrium aboard Havenspire. The chamber was cathedral-like, vast and bathed in gentle bioluminescence. Its architecture curved and spiraled organically, like it had grown from living matter, not been forged by tools. The medical assessment devices resembled swirling arches of mist woven from silver. Rylan stepped through the nearest one. A subtle hum filled the air, followed by a faint tingling across his skin. Nothing else. On the far side, dozens of Ilari scientists clustered around a floating console array. They emitted a chorus of worried chimes and warbling tones. Some scribbled, so furiously their hands became blurs. Others spoke in shrill bursts of alarm. "Everything all right?" Rylan asked, his voice steady despite the knot tightening in his chest. One of the scientists turned. Dr. Valekar, Havenspire's head biologist, looked like a scholarly insect, all angular limbs and oversized glasses clinging to his mandibles. "Your skeletal mass," he said, voice trembling, "exceeds any recorded sentient average by 40%. He tapped frantically at a display. "Your muscular strength is triple what we assumed biologically feasible. Your neural reflexes are," he hesitated, his feelers twitching. "Frankly, they defy our understanding of reaction limits." Then came the most jarring detail. "Your tolerance for trauma registers." Valekar checked the scanner again and squeaked involuntarily, like a startled toy. "Well beyond what our instruments can quantify." Dr. Amara Solis stepped through the next arch, calm and curious. The moment she emerged, another storm of concerned chirps and rapid scribbling exploded from the researchers. She tilted her head, fascinated. "They seem shocked." "Again." "This," Valekar muttered, showing her a glowing chart, "is a baseline Ilari citizen." The comparison charts were stark. Ilari norms were mere shadows of the human metrics. Muscle, bone, cognition. Every number humans produced surged beyond expected limits. "Huh," Amara muttered, arching an eyebrow. "So we're just a little more durable than average." That actually tracks. When Commander Ezra Nix stepped into the scanner, the reaction turned electric. Several researchers physically recoiled from their consoles, exchanging urgent glances. Ambassador Mira Wren was the last to enter the archway. As she emerged, half the alien scientists quietly exited the chamber. "Did we do something wrong?" she asked, her voice small. The door parted, and emissary Thao Rin entered. flanked by armored guards whose jittery posture betrayed their unease, even with weapons at the ready. "No wrongdoing," Thalrin said. "But we must understand." He turned to Rylan. "Commander Voss, in 50 millennia of interstellar unity, the Accord has never encountered a species like yours. By every measurable metric, your people are the most physically formidable we've ever seen." Rylan turned to his crew, their faces all reflecting the same quiet confusion. "But we're just humans," he said slowly. "We're not exceptional." And in that moment, it clicked. The Elari weren't curious. They were afraid of him, of his crew. And Rylan had no idea why. 3 cycles passed since that first contact, and the unease hadn't faded. As Rylan walked the pale corridors of Havenspire, conversations would halt. Aliens stared. Some even stepped aside and crossed walkways to avoid proximity. But High Chancellor Velan Thry was different. Unlike Thalrin's gentle demeanor, Velan Thry was statuesque and commanding, her mercury-toned skin catching the light like armor. Her voice, when she spoke in the Spire's circular summit chamber, was icy and absolute. "Commander Voss, the Accord Council has been in deliberation for 3 planetary rotations regarding your kind. We are in unfamiliar territory." She paused, consulting the glowing interface in her hands. "It has been decided. Humanity must demonstrate its capacity to coexist in peace with the wider galaxy." Rylan inclined his head. "That sounds fair. What do you need from us?" Velan Thry's gaze didn't waver. "We've prepared a sequence of trials, assessments of strength, intellect, and diplomacy. These will test how your species responds to adversity, conflict, and pressure." Her gleaming silver eyes fixed on him. "If you succeed, humanity may join the Accord. If you fail," she didn't finish. Dr. Solis leaned forward, brows furrowed. "If we fail, then what?" Velan Thry didn't blink. "Then your kind will be contained, restricted to your native system, for the protection of all others." Rylan clenched his jaw. "Understood. When do we begin?" The first trial commenced inside what the Elari called the Crucible of Resolve. It was a cavernous chamber, filled with shifting platforms, climbing towers, gravity-manipulating corridors, and logic puzzles embedded into the very walls. Dr. Alex Renault, their mission medic, observed from the control booth above, tracking Rylan's vitals in real time. "This evaluation typically takes 3 full days to complete," explained one of the observers, a spindly researcher with praying mantis-like limbs and translucent wings. "It gauges physical resilience, psychological endurance, and cognitive adaptability under sustained stress." Rylan stepped to the start of the trial. Behind him, the entire galaxy was watching. "Endurance," the observer declared, tapping the shimmering holopad. "The current record belongs to a Krenthani gladiator. Completion time: 2 days, 8 hours." Rylan eyed the sprawling course beyond the translucent barrier. It reminded him of Earth boot camp, though this looked easier by comparison. "All right," he said, rolling his shoulders. "Let's get started." "You may proceed once the blue signal pulses," Valekar instructed. The light blinked. Rylan surged forward. The first barrier was a vertical climb, jagged panels with shifting grips. He leapt, grabbed hold, and pulled himself upward in seconds. From beyond the chamber walls came a chorus of astonished murmurs, alien voices laced with disbelief. The next gauntlet forced him through narrow crawl spaces, weight-resistance corridors, and intricate puzzles that demanded solutions mid-sprint on a kinetic treadmill. Rylan's breath flowed evenly. It felt good. After endless council meetings and stifling protocols, movement was a kind of freedom. For hours in, Dr. Renault's voice buzzed through his earpiece. "Rylan, the observers are going wild out here. You're outpacing every known participant, by a lot." Rylan glanced at the remaining course. He wasn't even winded. "Tell them I'm pacing myself," he replied with a smirk. "Wouldn't want to make anyone feel bad." Outside the chamber, Valekar scribbled frantic notes. His vitals are steady. No signs of lactic buildup. He's treating our top-tier test like a light cardio routine. Veelanthrai watched in stunned silence as Rylan crossed a levitating beam while hauling a gravitational core, an object that weighed as much as their ground transports. He moved like it was filled with air. "This shouldn't be possible," she breathed. 8 hours after it began, Rylan stepped out of the chamber, calm, upright, barely a glisten of sweat on his brow. His uniform was rumpled, not drenched. "How are you feeling?" Dr. Renault asked, scanning him with the med link. "Honestly," Rylan said, stretching. "That felt good. Kinda reminded me of the old obstacle courses back in the academy." He cracked his neck. "So what's next?" Silence. No one answered. Valekar stared at the chrono display, tapping it 3 times before speaking. You completed the entire crucible in 8 hours. Too slow." Rylan asked, half joking. "I can go again if that helps." Several observers made a sound halfway between a gasp and a choking wheeze. The next trial took place in what the Elari dubbed the Contingency Dome. This time, it was Commander Ezra Nix's turn. The purpose: assess human aptitude for strategic command in simulated high-pressure conflicts. "You'll be immersed in escalating crisis scenarios," explained a new moderator, an azure reptilian creature with an excessive number of arms. "Each one becomes more complex than the last. Most species falter after the 3rd or 4th module." Ezra gave a firm nod. "Understood." The room darkened. Panels around him came alive with light, forming holographic battlefields. The first simulation deployed immediately, enemy craft launching a sudden assault on a neutral outpost. The simulation flickered to life around Ezra, a remote colony under siege. He took 30 seconds, analyzed the data streams, and began issuing crisp, confident commands to phantom units. His tactics were swift, precise, and flawless. Next came a hostage crisis aboard a drifting outpost. He resolved it in under 2 minutes. By the 5th simulation, the alien observers were no longer composed. They leaned forward in their seats, transfixed. Ezra maneuvered through chaotic, layered warfare, fleet-scale engagements across expanding space, with thousands of variables. To him, it looked like a game of chess. And he was winning. "How many modules are there?" he asked between simulations. 50, the multi-armed moderator replied, voice suddenly small. Ezra cracked his knuckles. "All right. Want me to keep going? I don't want to monopolize your whole day." By simulation 23, Ezra was juggling an all-out interstellar war. Fleets crisscrossed through wormholes. Civilian vessels scattered. He coordinated defenses while solving supply chain failures, political dissent, and civilian evacuations, all simultaneously. Yet his expression never changed. Calm, focused, in control. Chancellor Veelanthrai muttered to Thaurin, "This defies logic. No species can process this kind of pressure. Should we terminate the evaluation?" Thaurin whispered. A voice came from a room, firm and amused. "No need," Ezra said. "It's just getting interesting. They're trying a flank maneuver. Bold choice." 2 hours later, the room fell silent. Ezra had conquered all 50 scenarios, and he had done it with strategies the observers had never even considered. "How did you develop this cognitive matrix?" the reptilian instructor asked, barely concealing his disbelief. Ezra shrugged. "Military academy. Bit of real-world experience. Honestly, it wasn't that hard. You threw some pretty clever puzzles in there, though." The final evaluation belonged to Ambassador Mira Wren. Diplomatic integration. She entered a chamber filled with shimmering avatars, representatives of 12 warring factions, each demanding the impossible. Culture, history, ideology, they all clashed. These simulations often spanned several planetary rotations, explained the moderator, a sleek, golden being. Most negotiators collapse after 2 or 3 factions. The stress fractures alliances quickly. Mira took her seat. She listened. She watched. Then, with a calm, deliberate voice, she began to speak. She navigated every cultural pitfall with elegance, soft when needed, stern when required. She drew invisible bridges between ancient rivals. She identified overlapping fears, hidden motives, buried pain. And she offered solutions no one else had imagined. In 6 hours, 12 civilizations signed a unified treaty. The simulation ended. The moderators stared at her in stunned silence. "I don't understand," they said. "Some of these species have spilled each other's blood for millennia." "How did you?" Mira offered a quiet smile. "You have to hear what they really want, not what they say they want." Beneath it all, everyone in that room was trying to protect their people. Safety. Prosperity. You start from there. The rest is just language. That evening, Rylan and his crew joined the Accord dignitaries for a formal meal. The table was long, the food strange, and the atmosphere thick with tension. Rylan noticed the subtle glances, the whispered exchanges. The aliens weren't just watching them. They were wondering what they'd just unleashed. The silence in the room was deep enough to feel. The alien delegates stared at the human crew with unreadable eyes, anxious, unsure, and calculating. At last, High Chancellor Wielanthry stood. "Commander Voss," she said, her voice slow and deliberate, "your kind has completed every trial we laid before you, far beyond expectations." Her gaze swept the long table. "You've displayed physical capabilities that defy our science tactical insight, that outpaces our most experienced war strategists and diplomatic acumen, that unraveled rivalries older than many of our worlds." She paused. "And that terrifies us." Ryland set his fork down, stunned. "Why? We passed your tests. We've shown we're peaceful." "You've proven you can be peaceful," Wielanthry said. "But you've also demonstrated that if you chose not to be, there would be nothing we could do to stop you." The room went still. Ryland looked to his crew, Amara, Ezra, Mira, all equally silent. He turned back to the Elari. "We don't want power," he said quietly. "We didn't come here to dominate. We came to learn, to explore, maybe even to make friends." Thalrin's voice, barely above a whisper, filled the room. "And that, Commander, is what unsettles us most." He folded his luminous hands. "You possess the strength to conquer us all. But you don't. You choose restraint. We've never encountered a species with that kind of terrifying control." Rylan understood in that moment. Passing the trials hadn't lessened their fear. It had deepened it. And he still didn't know how to fix that. Later that night, Voss sat alone in his quarters, sipping a cup of earth-grown coffee, trying to process everything, until the klaxons blared. Crimson lights flared through the station's walls. Automated warnings rang out in every major galactic tongue. Lieutenant Theo Jalen's voice crackled through the comms. "Commander, we've got a situation. Incoming fleet on long-range sensors. Not responding to hails." Voss dropped the mug, grabbed his coat, and bolted. The corridors were chaos. Alien civilians ran past, some dragging bags, others clutching their children or simply standing, paralyzed by fear. He burst into the command deck. It was worse. Dozens of alien officers shouted across terminals. Alarms wailed. And at the center, Emissary Thalrin stood, visibly shaken, his normally serene face twisted in distress. "What's going on?" Ryland demanded. Thalrin turned, visibly relieved. "Thank the stars. Commander Voss, we're under threat. It's the Zellner Marauders. They've found the station." Ryland spun toward the primary display. 27 ships closed in on Kepler Station. Jagged, brutish things wrapped in plates of crude armor and bristling with weapons. They looked more like monsters than machines. "How much time do we have?" he asked. 4 hours, said Dr. Valekar, his spindly limbs trembling as he tapped commands into his console. "Maybe less." Ryland's jaw tightened. "What's the protocol here? Defense? Countermeasures?" The bridge crew exchanged uneasy glances. At last, Thalrin answered. Our standard procedure is negotiation. We offer payment, credits, resources, whatever they demand. They usually leave. You pay them off. Rylan asked, stunned. You give in to extortion. It's the safest route, Thalrin replied, visibly defensive. The Zelnor have been pillaging Accord space for over 4 decades, Thalrin said grimly. Their ships outpace ours, their weapons overmatch ours, and they fight with a cruelty that defies logic. On the view screen, Voss watched as several Federation vessels, 3 patrol crafts and 2 freighters, accelerated away from Kepler Spire. Where are they going? He asked, jaw clenched. Standard fallback directive, answered Admiral Kareem, a gelatinous being with dozens of shifting tendrils. We retreat to a safe perimeter and allow the pirates to strip the station. It prevents mass casualties. Voss's eyes narrowed. And what about the civilians? The researchers? Families. They'll have to negotiate independently, Kareem said, voice thick with regret. It's regrettable, but we lack the means to intervene. Rylan swept his eyes across the command deck. 2,000 lives scattered across this floating citadel. Scientists, ambassadors, workers, children. And the Accord was abandoning them. How many weapons are on board? He asked sharply. Valekar blinked. Weapons? This is a neutral science platform. We have shield barriers. Yes, but armaments? That would contradict Federation ethics. Rylan strode to the comm panel. Theo, are you monitoring this? Yes, sir, came the reply through static. The Aegis is standing by, awaiting your orders. Thalrin reached out, placing a thin, trembling hand on Rylan's arm. Commander Voss, you can't be serious. Engaging them would be suicide. They've never lost a battle. They have 27 ships. You have 1. Rylan turned toward him. How many innocents have they butchered in these raids? Thalrin's mouth moved, but no sound came. Thousands, he admitted at last. Tens of thousands, perhaps. And in all that time, Rylan said slowly, you've never once stood against them? The Elari's voice dropped to a whisper. We tried 40 years ago. We lost an entire task force. 300 ships. Since then, we surrender. It's the only way. Voss exhaled, then turned to the console. Theo, bring us about. Prepare for full combat deployment. Aye, Commander, Theo replied, and even through the audio delay, the anticipation in his voice was unmistakable. The command deck exploded into noise. Officers bolted from their stations, flooding the channels, desperately signaling the retreating Accord fleet. Commander, please, Admiral Kareem pleaded. You'll doom us all, your crew included. Rylan ignored them. He keyed the station-wide broadcast. His voice echoed through every corridor of Kepler Spire. This is Commander Rylan Voss of the Earth vessel Aegis. We are not abandoning this station. All residents seek shelter in internal sectors. Avoid outer hull zones. We will handle the situation. Across the screen, the Aegis moved silently between the station and the oncoming storm of ships. Against the backdrop of the stars, it looked pitifully small, like a child facing a tidal wave. Then, a guttural voice rasped through the comms. Human Commander. It said, the language broken but aggressive. You are in our path. Move or be destroyed. The pirate broadcast came through thick with static and venom. This is Captain Sarah Niven of the Void Reavers, snarled the voice, jagged and cruel. Move your fragile toy out of our path, or we'll turn it into debris. Rylan pressed the comm switch, voice calm and steel-edged. Captain Niven, this is Commander Rylan Voss of the Earth vessel Aegis. You are trespassing in protected Accord territory. Withdraw immediately, or we will stop you ourselves. What followed was laughter, harsh and mocking. One ship? Niven spat. You must be delusional. We're going to savor ripping you apart. Rylan glanced around his bridge crew, each face reflected in the glowing panels of the Aegis. Ezra Nix ran final checks on weapons, fingers dancing across the targeting matrix. Dr. Amara Solis sat poised at the tactical analysis station, monitoring pirate formations. Chief Engineer Tony Wells kept her eyes locked on power levels, fingers already queuing up an engine surge. "All right, people," Ryland said into his comm, "let's remind them who we are." He turned back to the comm. "Theo, take us into that asteroid cluster. Use the debris field for cover." Inside Kepler's command deck, the alien observers watched in shock as the human vessel plunged toward the dense halo of tumbling rock. The ship weaved through jagged masses at blistering speed. "He's going to crash," Valekar gasped, antennae quivering. But Ryland guided the Aegis like it was an extension of his own body. The vessel rolled and spiraled, slipping through tight gaps with inches to spare. It looked less like a ship and more like a falcon dancing through a storm. How is he flying like that?" Admiral Karim whispered. The Reaver fleet followed, but couldn't match the maneuvering. One ship clipped a spinning boulder, sending sparks and hull fragments into space. Another overcompensated, slamming into a jagged asteroid the size of a city block. A third attempted to cut through a narrow lane and shattered against solid rock. Ryland's voice came through the bridge comm, steady as ever. "Ezra, weapons free." The Aegis came to life, but it wasn't the barrage the aliens expected. Every pulse and beam was surgical, striking engines, disarming turrets, severing communication masts. Within minutes, 5 pirate vessels drifted aimlessly, powerless and silent. "Impossible," Thalrin whispered. "They're disabling them, not destroying them." The remaining Reaver ships tried to close the net, attempting to trap the Aegis in a crossfire. But Ryland was already ahead of them. He began rerouting Kepler's own systems, reconfiguring docking clamps into kinetic projectors, using abandoned defense nodes as jammers, turning sensor arrays into scatter fields. He weaponized the station's very architecture. "Tony," he called, "I need everything those engines can give." Tony grinned, already increasing output. "You got it, Commander." "She's hot and humming." The Aegis roared out of the asteroid belt like a missile loosed from a slingshot, engines blazing, hull gleaming, and aimed straight at the Reaver formation's exposed flank. They never saw it coming. Before the pirates could reposition, 3 more of their ships were stripped of weapons and propulsion. The Aegis tore through their formation with elegant brutality. Then the Reaver captain's voice returned, but this time it quivered with fear. "What are you? How are you doing this?" Ryland's voice crackled back over the channel, even and steady. "We're human, Captain Niven, and we don't bargain with marauders." The engagement lasted exactly 1 hour and 43 minutes. When it ended, 24 Reaver vessels were either drifting husks or reduced to glowing wreckage. Only 3 remained intact, and they were limping away, battered and broken, desperate to escape the system's pull. The Aegis returned to its post near Kepler Spire, scarred but upright. In the distance, Accord ships slowly crept back, sweeping the void with sensors, nervously checking for anything that might still be lurking. Inside the station's command chamber, no one spoke. Not at first. Then Thalrin found his voice. "Commander Voss, the Reavers have plagued us for 4 decades. Our greatest tacticians believed them undefeatable. How did one ship do this?" Ryland's image appeared on the view screen, leaning back in his captain's chair, looking worn but relaxed. "We used fundamental tactics, Counselor. Hit their blind spots. Exploit terrain. Focus fire on their systems. It wasn't complicated." Dr. Valekar tapped frantically at his scanners. "Commander, our biosensors show that your team's physiological stress barely changed. Your adrenaline levels were moderate. Heart rates barely elevated." Ryland chuckled softly. Felt like a good stretch. The Reavers don't coordinate well. Their formations broke under pressure. Made it simple. Admiral Karim sank into his seat, tendrils drooping. "Simple?" You shattered a war fleet that's haunted us for generations, and you call it simple. Ryland shrugged. We've had tougher days back home. Don't forget, we evolved on a death world. This? Just another Tuesday. The chamber filled with silence again. But this time, it was laced with something colder than fear. Dread. Because if this was routine for humans, if they considered wiping out an infamous pirate force a standard engagement, what else were they capable of? And what if one day they stopped choosing peace? News of the battle spread like an exploding star. Across every Accord system, the tale was told of a single ship barely larger than a freighter that had dismantled a fleet of terror in less than 2 hours. Some doubted the story. Others demanded answers. Who were these beings from the blue planet on the edge of nowhere? 3 weeks after the battle, another ship docked at Kepler Spire. The UN Odyssey, sleek, white-hulled, bearing Earth's crest. Aboard was Dr. Samuel Rourke, a tall, gentle-eyed man with silvering hair and a lifetime of studying life forms and adaptation. He was Earth's foremost xenobiologist. Alongside him came Admiral Caitlin Juneau, stoic, sharp, and commanding Earth's first official peacekeeping fleet. 12 vessels. Armed, ready, and watching. The Grand Assembly Hall of Kepler Spire shimmered with light and tension. Representatives from over 200 worlds had gathered, voices overlapping in a storm of languages. Some musical, some mechanical, all anxious. At the far edge of the chamber sat the delegation from Earth. Commander Ryland Voss, flanked by his crew and the newest arrivals from Sol, watched the alien dignitaries across the chamber. Every glance cast their way was filled with caution or fear. High Chancellor Velan Thry stepped to the central dais, her metallic skin gleaming beneath the hall's ceiling lights. "We convene today," she announced, voice echoing through the chamber, "to address the human dilemma." A hush swept through the room. In the span of a month, this species has achieved feats that defy our most fundamental assumptions about sentient life. We require answers. She gestured toward a massive view screen. Data streamed across it. Test results, neural readouts, battle footage from the Reaver conflict. It painted a clear picture. One species. Unmatched performance. How is such effectiveness even possible? Dr. Samuel Rourke stood. His tall frame relaxed despite the eyes of hundreds upon him. With a calm breath, he stepped into the speaking circle. "The answer," he said, "is evolution." He tapped a panel. A star map bloomed above them, dots of color scattered across the spiral arms of the galaxy. Nearly every intelligent species in this federation evolved on temperate, forgiving worlds. Garden planets, places of soft sunlight, steady climates, and minimal threats. You thrived by cooperating, by solving problems with empathy and reason. The hologram zoomed in on several such homeworlds. Emerald forests, peaceful oceans, soft skies unmarred by lightning or fire. Paradise. But Earth, Rourke said, his voice dipping low, is different. The image shifted, now showing Earth. From orbit, it already looked hostile. Towering storm systems churned across oceans. Deserts glared beneath burning sun. Icy caps clawed at the poles. Scorch marks from volcanic eruptions scarred the crust. For millions of years, Rourke said, Earth tried to destroy us. The room stilled. He continued, "We survived ice ages that swallowed continents, volcanic winters that blotted out the sun, impacts from space that ended entire epochs. Our lands quake. Our skies howl. Our seas rise." The delegates leaned forward, their expressions darkening with realization. And the predators, the hologram, displayed Earth's deadliest animals. Lions charging through golden grass. Sharks slicing through deep waters. Crocodiles snapping bone. Bears roaring. Serpents coiling. "We evolved beside killers," Rourke said. "Creatures designed by nature to stalk and slaughter. We didn't dominate our world because we were the strongest. We had to become stronger, more adaptable, more cunning. We had no choice. An ambassador with wings like stained glass slowly raised one trembling appendage. But surely your kind must have. A delicate voice rose from the center gallery, fluttery, almost hesitant. But surely your people must have found havens, places safe from all that violence, from the chaos. Rourke's expression turned somber. There were no sanctuaries, he said quietly. No gentle corners to hide in. On Earth, there was only one way forward. Through every trial, every threat. You either adapted or you vanished. The room grew still. For millions of years, Rourke continued, only those humans who were strongest, sharpest, and most adaptable survived long enough to pass on their genes. Evolution didn't gift us with peace. It forged us in hardship. Dr. Valekar, his mandibles twitching, leaned forward. Are you implying that humans are designed for war? No, Rourke said gently. Not war. Endurance. He turned slowly, addressing the assembly. What you've seen, our speed, our stamina, our command of tactics under pressure, those aren't elite skills. That's just humanity on default settings. That's our survival instinct. Admiral Caitlin Juneau rose beside him. Doctor, she said, show them the comparative data. Rourke tapped the display panel again. Two holographic figures appeared. One marked as an average Federation citizen, the other labeled baseline human. The contrast was jarring. Your average citizen, Rourke said, can lift approximately 80 units by your metric. The average human? Over 250. We jump farther, endure more pain, heal faster, and our nervous systems respond 4 times quicker to visual threats. Several counselors exchanged worried glances. But physical stats are just the beginning, Rourke went on. The real difference lies here. He pointed to his head. We evolved surrounded by predators stronger than us. We survived by outthinking them. The display morphed again, showing early humans flanking wild animals, crafting tools, building traps. We became masters of reading intent, because if we failed to notice a threat, we died. We learned to function as packs because solitary humans didn't make it. We're cooperative, not because it's moral, but because it's practical. From his seat, Counselor Zether raised his smooth hand. Dr. Rourke, you describe these traits as if they're universal. But surely Commander Voss and his crew are extraordinary. Rourke smiled faintly and turned to look at the humans seated behind him. Ryland sat with his usual calm. Ezra lounged with arms crossed. Amara fiddled with a diagnostic tool. None of them seemed comfortable with the attention. They're not extraordinary, Rourke said. They're average. I tested them using our military benchmarks. Voss scored middle tier in physical metrics. Nix's strategic profile was solid, but not top tier. Solis is a competent scientist, but not one of our elite. The silence that followed was thunderous. One by one, alien delegates turned to stare at the human team, some in disbelief, others in dread. High Chancellor Villanthrai's voice came slowly. You're saying the team who crushed the Reavers, completed our impossible assessments, are just normal? That's correct, Rourke said. Back home, there are humans far more capable. Elite soldiers, polymath scientists, grandmasters of strategy. A tall delegate from the Solaran Verdants, a race that resembled living trees, began trembling so violently that their leaves cascaded onto the table. How many of your kind exist? Admiral Juneau stepped forward, voice sharp as blade glass. Roughly 12 billion. And that number grows every year as we expand. A long shiver ran through the assembly. The Verdants' trembling intensified. Several delegates covered their faces. Because now, the question wasn't whether humans could be allies. It was what the galaxy would do if humans ever stopped choosing to be. A rising murmur rippled through the assembly as counselors leaned toward one another, their whispers sharp and urgent. Fear was giving way to something else, disbelief, maybe awe. Dr. Rourke remained centered, unfazed by the rising tide of voices. "There's one more thing you need to understand about humanity," he said, bringing the hall back to stillness. "We don't think of Earth as dangerous." He gestured, and a new stream of images flickered across the towering display. Sunlight bathed city skylines. Children played beneath autumn trees. Families picnicked beside volcanic lakes, unbothered by steaming fissures nearby. Cyclones brewed in the distance, but nobody ran. No one seemed afraid. "To us," Rourke continued, "Earth is beautiful, familiar, home, a beat. We don't fear it, we thrive in it." The display changed again. This time it showed bleak, inhospitable planets. Jagged landscapes scorched by radiation. Acid clouds and gravity that could crush most life. The screens labeled them Class 15, Class 16, each a death sentence by Federation metrics. "And these," Rourke said, "are our vacation spots." Veldar's mandibles clicked in rapid alarm. "You terraform death worlds for leisure. Some folks enjoy the challenge." Admiral Juno answered with a casual shrug. "Gives the kids something to brag about." The room erupted in overlapping exclamations. Dr. Rourke calmly tapped the panel again. A final projection came to life, an expanding network of stars and trajectories. "Projected human colonization within the next century," he explained. 50 planets. Many of them worlds your species have written off as uninhabitable. He looked around the chamber. "We're not expanding out of desperation. We're doing it because we want to, because that's who we are. We chase the unknown." A pause. "And so," he said slowly, "the real question isn't whether humans can coexist with the Federation." He let that sink in. "The question is, do you want us beside you or out there on our own?" The silence was deafening. High Chancellor Violenthry slowly stood, her voice tentative. "What exactly are you proposing?" Admiral Juno stepped beside Rourke, folding her hands behind her back. "We've studied your situation. The Zelnoth weren't an isolated incident. You've got slavers operating unchecked in the outer territories. Species violating your borders. Entire colonies lost to disasters you weren't prepared for." Rourke nodded. "We've noticed, and we understand. The Federation wasn't built to deal with chaos." He leaned in slightly. "But humans were." Morrison's voice finally cut through from the delegation table. Calm, firm, unmistakably human. "We're not here to dominate. We don't want to take over your systems or your council. All we've ever wanted is to explore, to build, to help." His eyes scanned the room. Back home, there's an old phrase, "With great power comes great responsibility." Zether, once so composed, spoke in a voice barely audible. "You would offer your strength even after all this? Even after seeing our fear?" Morrison nodded. "Of course. Fear comes from not knowing. But the more you understand us, the more you'll see. We're not monsters." He smiled gently. "We're just really good at surviving." Admiral Juno turned to face the full assembly. "Earth proposes a partnership," she said. "You bring the vision, the history, the unity. We bring what we've always brought, resilience, ingenuity, and the grit to do what needs to be done. In exchange, we ask for full membership and the right to plant our flag among the stars, your stars, together. But understand this," Rourke added quietly, his voice steady as stone. "Humans are children of a death world. We don't quit. We don't fold. And we never abandon those who call for help." He let that hang in the air like thunder after lightning. "If you stand with us, we'll shield you with everything we've got. Every ounce of strength. Every drop of resolve." A pause. "But if you choose to stand against us," he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Silence fell across the chamber like a guillotine. Every representative, from the insectoid Yareks to the crystalline Virellans, sat in stunned stillness. Because in that moment, they all understood what humanity truly was, a force born of chaos, offering protection or destruction. It was Morandai who broke the silence at last, rising with the slow grace of ancient diplomacy. This council will require time to weigh your proposal. Admiral Juno inclined her head. Of course. Take all the time you need. We'll be here when you're ready. But everyone knew the choice had already been made, because the Federation needed humanity more than humanity ever needed the Federation. And that was what truly frightened them. 6 months passed. Across thousands of light years, the debate had turned to wildfire. Some species heralded humanity as guardians. Others demanded containment, fearing what might happen if Earth's children grew restless. A few radicals even whispered the unthinkable, a first strike. Eliminate the threat before it became unstoppable. But the galaxy wouldn't get that chance, because the real danger came from somewhere else entirely. General Petra Robbins stood inside the Galactic War Command Center on Centris Prime, her expression carved from granite. She had 30 years in Earth's armed forces behind her and not a flicker of doubt in her gaze. Beside her, Admiral Kathmara's limbs twisted with unease. 17 colonies, he said, staring at the tactical holograms. Gone. In less than a month. 17. Petra repeated, low. They move faster than any known force, he continued. No negotiation. No prisoners. They don't retreat. They don't even slow down. Across the room, red markers bled across the galactic display, showing entire systems consumed by an unstoppable tide. The Zordan hegemony had arrived, and they weren't interested in treaties. They claimed the galaxy by birthright, Valekar added, eyes flicking over casualty reports. To them, every other species is a mistake to be corrected or erased. Their soldiers wore armor like black obsidian, and their ships weren't designed. They were forged. Brutalist hunks of death, bristling with weapons and driven by silence. What's their goal? Petra asked. Total domination, Valekar replied grimly. They don't even slow for salvage. Petra stared at the screen. Federation defenses were collapsing in system after system. Peacekeeping vessels were shredded before they could engage. Diplomats never returned. How long until they breached the core worlds? She asked. At their current speed? Kathmara said, his voice almost a whisper. 6 months. Maybe less. The command center doors hissed open, and in stepped President Amy Foster of Earth. She wore the weight of humanity like armor, quiet, proud, unbreakable. Her eyes took in the room, the chaos, the fear. And then she said 3 words that shifted the fate of the galaxy. Where do you need us? She was small in stature, with warm eyes that gave the illusion of softness. But General Robbins knew better. Beneath President Amy Foster's calm demeanor was iron will forged in crisis. Trailing behind her, newly promoted Admiral Jacob Rourke entered the command chamber, flanked by his core team. General, the President began, her voice clipped and clear. The Federation Council has officially requested Earth's intervention. Is our response force operational? Robbins nodded. Yes, Madam President. The Human Protection Corps is mission ready. We've mobilized 200 warships and assembled 50,000 volunteers, all prepped and eager to deploy. Rourke stepped forward, face unreadable, but eyes alive with fire. I've reviewed Zordan battle doctrine. They hit hard, move fast, and crush resistance with brute force. Standard galactic bully tactics. But they've never dealt with predators that hit back. Dr. Elise Marin, now acting as humanity's lead liaison to the Federation, added, we've analyzed their psychological framework. The Zordan evolved on a violent world, similar to Earth, but they never embraced collaboration. Their culture is built entirely on dominance and subjugation. President Foster studied the tactical display, red lines of encroachment slicing through Federation space like open wounds. What's your recommendation, Admiral? Rourke's mouth curled into a smile Robbins recognized all too well. That look had haunted tyrants. Let's remind the galaxy what happens when Deathworlders stop holding back. The first joint operation between humans and Federation forces ignited in the Catha system, where 3 member worlds were under siege. Zordan fleets had surrounded them, raining devastation and demanding total surrender. Rourke's task force arrived first, 20 human vessels, staring down a swarm of 200 enemy warships. The numbers screamed suicide. Aboard the U.S. Defender, Commander Harper reviewed the final attack sequences. Meanwhile, Chief Engineer Antonio Walsh fine-tuned hybrid human Federation systems, newer, faster, stronger. In every ship, Rourke's voice came across the comm. Cool, unshaken. The galaxy's watching. Let's show them what it means when Earth answers the call. From the enemy line, a transmission pierced the comms. The Zordan commander, War Prime Throne, spoke with venom. Fragile mammals, he sneered. You've brought 20 toys to challenge 200 blades. Your corpses will warn the stars, resist us, and perish. Rourke's response was steel wrapped in silk. War Prime Throne, you're targeting civilian populations. Leave now or suffer consequences. Throne's reply came in the form of laughter, cold and cruel. You dare threaten us? We've raised 1,000 worlds. We do not retreat. Rourke's answer was quiet, final. We tamed our world. That's the difference. What followed would reshape military strategy across the stars. The Defender launched a maneuver that split the enemy's line, drawing them in, overextending their advantage. Human ships flowed like liquid through Zordan formations, striking from blind angles with surgical precision. Their weapon systems, refined through trial by apocalypse, found the soft points no Zordan had ever defended. Enemy warships burned. Entire wings of Zordan fighters vanished into debris fields. And still the humans pressed forward, calm under fire, calculating in the chaos. Because this wasn't a battle to them. This was home. And the invaders had walked straight into it. For the first time in centuries, the stars bore witness to something no Zordan strategist had ever prepared for. The human fleet didn't fight like any species before. They cut through the void like predators unleashed, swift and lethal, maneuvering with a grace and brutality that turned the battlefield into their playground. What the Zordan had expected was war. What they received was art. The humans wove through gravitational eddies and orbital debris fields, using the planet's pull like slingshots. They baited ambushes, dodged solar flares with milliseconds to spare, and used bursts of radiation as concealment. Instead of meeting the Zordan head-on, they turned the fight into a multi-axis assault, fighting in 3 dimensions with a precision the enemy couldn't track, let alone counter. Commander Harper moved the fleet like pieces on a cosmic chessboard, always 5 moves ahead, always exactly where the Zordan weren't expecting. The enemy tried to encircle them. The humans vanished. They regrouped. The humans struck from behind. Aboard the command vessel, Dr. Marin monitored the chaos with a focused gaze, eyes flickering across the psychological readouts of the enemy commanders. They're unraveling, she reported, voice steady. They've never fought anyone who hits back this hard. They're built to intimidate, not endure. And now, intimidation was useless. The battle burned for 4 relentless hours. By the time the last Zordan vessel limped into retreat, half of their armada lay shattered among the stars. The rest scattered in panic. Human losses, superficial damage to 3 ships. Not a single life lost. The final message from War Prime Throne crackled with disbelief and impotent fury. What are you? 20 vessels against my entire host? How did you win? Admiral Rourke's reply was broadcast across every frequency, flooding Federation and Zordan space alike. We're called humans, War Prime. We come from a planet that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. And yet we endured. We protect those who can't defend themselves. We don't break. And we don't run. The impact was immediate. The story swept through the stars faster than any fleet. A single battle had shifted the tide of a war, and shattered the myth of Zordan supremacy. Federation morale surged. Worlds that had once cowered under threat now dared to stand tall. Most surprising of all, species who once feared humanity now volunteered to fight beside them. They called it the Death World Accord. 6 weeks later, the final reckoning came. The E-Nexus Gate, an ancient convergence of wormholes and gravity wells, was the key to the Federation's heartlands. The Zordan threw everything into its capture, determined to crush the uprising once and for all. Their greatest fleet, led by War Prime Vito, awaited. But the Federation had prepared. Aboard the flagship, President Foster stood beside High Counselor Morandai and Counselors Thar. No speeches, no ceremony, just silence, as thousands of warships lit up the darkness, with engines primed for war. Admiral Rourke stood at the helm of a coalition fleet, 400 ships, half human, half Federation. The humans, surgical and unforgiving. The Federation ships, crewed by volunteers who had chosen to fight with the predators from Earth. The Zordan came in waves, ruthless, relentless. And the humans answered not with mercy, but with resolve. The humans had taught the galaxy a lesson it never expected to learn. They showed the Federation that kindness and strength weren't opposites. That peace didn't mean weakness. That you could defend what mattered without losing who you were. The joint fleet, half human, half Federation, fought as one. Earth's brutal precision fused with the Federation's elegance and resolve. They shielded one another, shared energy reserves, and refused to leave a single ally behind. When Zordan warships tried to carve through the human front, Federation cruisers surged into the breach. When a Federation vessel began to falter, human reinforcements arrived like clockwork. Fierce, unflinching, unyielding. In the command deck of a flagship, President Foster watched in silence. Her eyes welled with quiet pride. "They're learning," she whispered to Counselor Morandai. "Your people are learning that they can be powerful, without becoming monsters." The battle turned when War Prime Thal's dreadnought was struck by a coordinated barrage. Fires ripped through its hull. It began to list, wounded, but still alive. Admiral Morrison didn't fire the final shot. Instead, he opened a channel. "War Prime Thal, your command ship is disabled. Your fleet is in full retreat. I offer you a single chance to surrender with dignity." The Zordan leader's voice returned, laced with disbelief. "You would spare us? We came to burn your worlds." "Because that's not who we are," Jake replied. "We fight to protect, not to punish. There's still a place for your people, if you choose peace." The war ended not with extinction, but with an invitation. The Zordan were brought into the Federation, not as rulers or rebels, but as students of peace under protection. A chance to rebuild and to belong. 3 months later, President Foster stood beneath a sky of banners on Centris Prime, addressing the largest assembly the galaxy had ever gathered. Thousands of species filled the chamber. From jungle world insectoids to crystalline gas giants, all watched in silence. "This is a new beginning," she said, her voice echoing through the grand dome. "Today, the Human Protection Corps is officially chartered. We will go where the danger is. We will stand where others fall. And we will never let the helpless stand alone." She paused. "We are not conquerors. We are not overlords. We are children of a deadly world who chose to build, not break, to heal, not harm." And so, the stars changed. In the months that followed, human-led expeditions mapped forgotten systems. They offered aid to lost colonies and made first contact with species hidden in the void. Human doctors brought cures to plagues thought eternal. Human engineers rebuilt shattered skylines. And sometimes, when the universe held its breath in peace, Jake Morrison would sit in his captain's chair aboard the UES Defender, sip his coffee, and stare into the abyss with a quiet smile. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not as tyrants, but as guardians. If that gave you chills, You haven't seen anything yet. Subscribe to witness what happens when the galaxy learns what humans are truly capable of. Hit the bell, because in the next chapter, it's not just survival, it's evolution versus extinction.